My guest at this time is retired U.S. Navy Captain Chuck Nash. He is a frequent national security analyst and has appeared for many years on the Fox News Channel. Regular listeners will know that Captain Nash has a particular expertise on Iran. So what should we glean from the Trump administration announcing late Sunday that due to apparent threats from Iran, we are moving the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln and a bomber task force to the Middle East to address these concerns? And Captain Nash, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure, Greg.
Well, the statement came from National Security Advisor John Bolton on Sunday, quoting from ABC News here now, that the resources were deployed in response to unspecified, quote, troubling and escalatory indications and warnings. He also said the deployments were intended to send a clear and unmistakable message to the Iranian regime that any attack on United States interests or on those of our allies will be met with unrelenting force. And finally, the United States is not seeking war with the Iranian regime, but we are fully prepared to respond to any attack, whether by proxy, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or regular Iranian forces. So obviously we're not getting a lot of details on what this threat is, but how serious does it have to be to get a response like this and shifting those resources?
Yeah, that's pretty unambiguous. There obviously something very definitive happened, and by calling it troubling and escalatory INW, indications and warning, that is language that means, okay, we've got verifiable evidence. Verifiable evidence could be signals intelligence backed by movements on the ground where you see not just a plan being discussed where it could be a fake, but you actually see forces or people moving into positions that would follow along to where it's more than just chatter. So I think they found something. And notice that also Ambassador Bolton, in his comments, talked about regular Iranian forces, the IRGC, which is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or proxies. So when you tie that together, I think what he is laying out to the Iranian regime is, we got you, okay? We got you. We know what's going on, so that will get them to back down because their plan is obviously blown.
Wow. So obviously the statement itself is a direct verbal shot anyway at Iran, and now we're moving the resources. So the carrier gets there, the bombing group gets there. What do we actually do in the region to project a message, or just to make sure that they're not acting in according to this plot that we've apparently uncovered?
The Central Command and the Fifth Fleet Naval Commander is the NAVCENT, which is the component commander for the Navy, and AFCENT, the Air Force, have for years worked the problem based on what assets the Iranians had for all those years and then building, and as it changed, they've always modified and kept up plans to reopen the Strait of Hormuz should the Iranians try to close it. Now, that could be try to close it with surface-to-surface missiles and mines, or their submarines or surface units, small boat swarms. There are all kinds of different capabilities that the Iranian Navy has and that the IRGC Navy has. Now, when you hear and have heard about harassing forces, Iranian harassing forces of U.S. naval vessels in the Persian Gulf, that's not been the Iranian Navy, the regular Iranian Navy. It's been the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. And one thing about the IRGC is they not only have a Navy, they have an Army, and they're in charge of the strategic rocket forces. So they are directly tied and swear allegiance to the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. They do not. So it's sort of like Hitler's SS. The regular German army, the Wehrmacht, swore allegiance to the nation state of Germany. The SS swore personal allegiance to Adolf Hitler. The IRGC swore personal allegiance to the supreme leader. So they have a completely different command structure. They sometimes exercise together, but they are under the direct control of the supreme leader, and they answer only to him, not to the regular military command inside of Iran.
And if we're going to continue the parallel to the Third Reich, I'm guessing that they have freedom to be quite a bit nastier than their more conventional counterparts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they have been. And they've been very reckless at some times, almost trying to force the U.S. to overreact to a situation, which then they could use as an opening to increase hostilities.
Captain Nash, this Iranian regime has hated us for 40 years, ever since the revolution, so it's not like they need a new reason to want to harm us. But we are just a few weeks after the U.S. declaring the IRGC to be a terrorist organization. The president, of course, backing out of the Iran nuclear deal and reapplying some of the sanctions. So how much pressure is Iran under, and what might be motivating them to have put together whatever plot this is?
Well, I think several reasons. One, their economy is in the tank. Inflation is rising. People are very unhappy with the way things are going. There were demonstrations in the streets not that long ago. And, of course, as you point out, with the designation last month of the IRGC as a terrorist organization, the Iranian government, the supreme leader, designated U.S. forces in the Middle East as terrorists. So I think this is more than just coincidence. I think the IRGC designation and their Quds Force, and the IRGC Quds Force, what they do is they are the external terrorist supporting and terrorist operations entity within the IRGC. And they have been very active in places like Syria, Yemen, all over the world, in fact, Quds Force. That's their external terrorist operations. So it could have been a situation where maybe a Quds Force operation was uncovered setting up something in Yemen to target, say, a U.S. ship coming through the Red Sea. It could have been something that was going to happen in Europe. But whatever it was, we found out about it, and now they know that we know, and if they go through with it, not only is the plan likely to fail, but they're likely to reap severe repercussions.
What do you make of the fact that we went public with this? Obviously, there's a reason
to stop it.
We announced it, so that was that close to happening.
I think so. When I know Ambassador Bolton, and he would not use troubling and escalatory indications and warning. That, to me, that language is very parsed. Very parsed. There's no wiggle room in there.
What do you look for now?
The United States will maintain forces in the Gulf, will be at increased readiness, and I'm sure there's back channel communication going on to let the Iranians know. They already know that we know. So whatever it was, I think it shuts down. The question is, what happens next? Do they try something else, or do they start to reassess all of their communications? How did they find out? What was blown? Do they have people on the inside? Something went terribly wrong in their planning and execution.
A lot of questions to be answered, but the severity of this, I think, is pretty clear, as you've explained quite well. Captain Nash, always good to have your insight, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure, Greg.
Retired U.S. Navy Captain Chuck Nash, frequent national security analyst, many years on the Fox News Channel. I'm Greg Corombos reporting for Radio America.